This is the injury report presented by NYU Langone Health. All right, by now we all know Giants big man Dexter Lawrence is out for the season with a dislocated left elbow. So in today's injury report, we're talking with Dr. Natasha Desai, who is a NYU Langone sports medicine specialist. Doc, how you doing today? Thanks for jumping on with us.
How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, just bad news all around for the Giants and for Dexter, because we're talking about a guy whose name was being thrown around for Defensive Player of the Year. He hyperextended the elbow on Thanksgiving. He was then placed on IR with 5 games left in the season. So let's say, and I know it's a hypothetical, the Giants weren't 2-10 and they were still in contention for a playoff spot. Could Dexter have played through that injury?
Looked like a pretty significant dislocation. So elbow dislocations are not one that's easy to play through. It's not like a finger dislocation where you could just, pop it back in and tape it up and go back to play. There's a pretty significant amount of inflammation that sets in, and there are some ligaments that can be affected that you'll want to stabilize. And given what he does, being on the D line, his hands are up and pushing against other players pretty repetitively. So I think it would have been difficult for him to play through that.
All right, so it would have been bad news regardless. Big guy like that, he probably would have tried to push through it, but he wouldn't have been the same. I mean, we saw the video and how he hurt the elbow, but what actually happens when you hyperextend an elbow or a knee? And since we're talking about one of the strongest dudes in the NFL, how is this going to affect his offseason training?
Sure. So hyperextension, the elbow and the knee joint are hinge joints, essentially. The end of the humerus and the end of the femur are round, and they are opposed to a socket-like joint. The elbow has a round socket of the ulna. So it works like a hinge, and it has a typical range of motion that goes from straight to the flex position, right? So when you hyperextend it, it goes beyond straight. And so there's the compression side, the back side that is essentially getting crushed and the bones are hitting against each other. And then there's the tension side, which is the front when it's hyperextended, which is getting stretched. So you're stretching the connective tissue, the capsule, the ligaments, things like that. And so once you go beyond the range of motion that the hinge joint is designed to go, that's when you're vulnerable to actually dislocate or the bone to come out of its socket. And that's, why it is such a big injury. It's not just the bones shifting out. It has to physically be forced out by the physics of the injury.
Everything you said was just so informative, but it sounded so painful at the same time. And you don't have to be a NFL or Pro Bowl caliber defensive lineman to hyperextend your elbow. Regular people do it all the time. So what's the difference in their recovery compared to a 6'6", 340-pound Dexter Lawrence?
Sure. So you asked me about the offseason and the lifting. So basically, both Dexter and the layperson is going to have to give their body time for the soft tissue injuries, and if there is any bony injuries, to heal, right? You want it to heal, and you want it to heal correctly the first time. And usually, thankfully, elbows heal relatively well, as long as there's no major structural injury. Elbows take around 3 to 4 months to heal. It is going to swell up and become very stiff. Elbows are notorious to become stiff. So it is a joint that very routinely needs a good amount of physical therapy to get back to normal working condition. But around the 3 or 4 month mark, things are getting back to normal. And Dexter should be able to get back to regular lifting and getting, that weight training back into effect probably around that time as well.
Doc, before I let you go, Giants quarterback Tommy DeVito didn't play in the Thanksgiving Day game because of a forearm injury. He underwent an MRI, but no fracture was found. And we're talking about a guy who's got the chance of a lifetime, being the Giants QB1 again. And he's probably not sitting out unless he's dealing with a lot of pain. So what's he dealing with when it comes to pain and mobility? And could he be healthy enough, I guess, to play again this Sunday against the Saints?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's not just that they didn't find any bony injury, that they reported that they didn't find any structural injuries. So
Mm.
no muscle tearing, tendon tearing, or anything like that. So without a specific injury for us to review film in, it's hard to say exactly what's going on. My guess is one of two things. This was his first start after a long time, so maybe there's just a sheer volume and aggression
Mm.
in his throwing that he hasn't been doing in a long time, and it created like a muscle strain type of pain. Or when he did have that hit, maybe the other player landed on his forearm and caused like a little bit of a crush or contusion type of injury that is causing swelling and a decent amount of pain. But without any obvious structural injury that the medical team is pointing to, I think it's basically day to day, and it's going to be based upon his ability to tolerate the pain and be able to handle the volume of throwing for a whole game.
So you can't hurt your forearm by doing the celebration, right? Like that's he didn't do it during the celebration, right?
I don't think it was a celebration, but I don't know if that helped it.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks you for that, Doc. That was awesome. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.